we will start talking a little bit about negotiation.
And just a minute, is you all are invited. I'm having the barbecue event open house down on 1061 Moreland tomorrow from 12 to 3. Everyone is invited. The parking is limited, so you'll need to park at the Kroger. Go just past the house and park at the Kroger, and it's 6 houses past the Kroger, 6 houses from the Kroger. But you all are invited. Come on, we're going to have videographer there. It'll be fun, and give this house a lot of love.
You know, Candace, if I was you, I would try to figure out who did that hardscape in the backyard and give whoever that is some major props.
My client did that.
That's just themselves.
He does every single home that I've sold for him. He does something wild in the backyard like that. I mean,
that place is awesome.
I told him, I said, why don't you go into landscape design? And he was like, no, I don't ever want to do it again, but he always does.
All right, congratulations. Candace, will you post the details on the chat about that, please?
I sure will. Thank you.
Perfect.
Can I also comment, Bill, that you did a great job last night on the panel during the profit share meeting. I found that so informative and just really kind of reinforces that we need to focus on that too. You know, when we're doing our lead gen, focus on helping other people to see the value in Keller Williams. And Jenny, you know, touched on that this morning. A lot of folks aren't getting what they get at Keller Williams at other brokerages. So thank you for being on that panel last night. It was a good meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. I would hope I would get the recording here in next day or so. I was on a panel for the Social Equity Task Force for the Southeast region last night on profit share. And myself and a couple others got a chance to share our stories and kind of talk a little bit about how we've, what efforts we've done in the past to attract people to Keller Williams. So thank you very much for the recognition. Okay, so I've got a few ideas about negotiation. I want to, there's a couple of really, really important concepts that I want to make sure that you guys are very familiar with. But let's just take a quick moment and do a little round the room. Is that anyone have any particular situations that they want some commentary on? So it doesn't feel quite like I'm the teacher, you're the students, you just sit there and let me talk.
Does it matter if it's on the listing or the buying side?
No, anything. We're negotiating all the time.
Okay. So still trying to get a listing that I like. I feel like, yes, it's going to happen, but she just hasn't pulled the trigger yet. And I've been giving her advice on, vendor recommendations and things to do with her home. But she just balked at the fee, our commission fee, even though I said, 1% goes to broker, 1% goes to marketing, 1% goes to, me to feed my kids. So, and I told her I might be able to negotiate a little bit, but she just hasn't pulled the trigger yet. So.
Okay, cool. So let's go into that for a second. That's a bit of a vague kind of counter offer, if you will, right? You said it's 6%. She said no. You said I might be able to negotiate, and that's kind of where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
So it's unclear whether whose court it's in, kind of.
I see.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in that type of situation, I would probably be a little bit more forward than most agents would.
Okay.
And I would say, listen, you have an amazing property here. And I am just, I can't get it out of my mind, all the ideas that I would do to bring this home to the community and to find an awesome buyer for you. Okay. I love what you've done here. And as a part of the mission of the Dalchero group, right, you can bring that back up, right? We could say, hey, our mission is to build wealth for our clients, right? And I believe this is a perfect time for me to help you build wealth through selling this property in this type of market. So I really, really would love this opportunity.
Okay.
What do you need to hear or not hear so that we can get started working together today?
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Because it could be something silly. Could be like, hey, I want to, 2 open houses a month and then I'm cool. Oh, that's it? You should have told me that a month ago. Right? So, I mean, oftentimes when we were doing a lot of recruiting as team leader, like we were right there. Like they liked everything I was saying and I wanted to be in business with them. And I'm like, hey, I want to be in business together. What's it going to take? And they're like, I'd like a sign. I'm like, okay, sign the paperwork, right? So oftentimes it's not even a thing. But unless you ask them, don't just say, I want to do business. Say like why you want to do business, right? Give them some compliments along the way, right? You got a beautiful home here. I love what you did in the kitchen. I love having listings like this, right? I think we'd have a lot of fun working together, and I'm confident I can get you the best price possible. And then you might echo back what else they've told you is important. Like, you know, I'm confident we can get you a move in November instead of October or something, right? I'd like for you to put me to work. What else do we need to resolve and finalize before we get started? Right? So it's kind of a way of isolating the objection. Well, first you're clarifying it, then you're isolating it. So other than the fact that we haven't resolved commission yet, is there anything else that's stopping us from getting started today? No, I love you. Everything's great. Just need to talk about commission. Great. So tell me, what are you waiting to hear from me or someone else for you to be comfortable moving forward? Well, I want somebody to do it for 2%. Okay. Why is that important to you? Well, I want to save as much money as possible. So have you been interviewing other agents that said they do it for 2%? Well, yeah. And how quickly were they willing to give up that 1%? Oh my gosh, they like basically came in the door and said, I'll do it for 2%. Wow, how quick do you think they'll negotiate away your hard-earned equity? Well, I never thought about it like that, right? I'm not saying say no to the commission objection, and I'm not saying yes to agreeing to a lower fee. I'm just simply saying if you ask another question or two and they have to say whatever they're going to say, it's going to cause it levels the playing field a little bit. At least you know what you're working with.
And Bill, I love that. I love that. And I also remember last Friday when John Serrano was on, she told the story of how, you know, you could tell a story and borrow a story from The Office or use one of your stories, Marinelli, where you say something like, you know, oftentimes, and it's funny because I hear our offices aren't very soundproof, so I hear Trent all the time on the phone with his scripts, and he's like a boss. I mean, he's just master. But if you say something like, you know, a lot of times I understand what you're saying. A lot of times I wouldn't want to spend, you know, X amount of dollars if I didn't have to. But I can tell you that oftentimes in our negotiations, when you have someone who's an expert negotiator, we were able actually to get this property $25,000 more than what the homeowner thought it was worth. And we got it closed for that. So it more than paid for that extra percent.
Yeah, give them a little bit of pushback. Don't just lay down and expect the first thing out of their mouth to be their final offer. At least make them defend it. Right. And just a quick note on Trent, he's not here to support this, but you know, he's only been in the business for 4 or 5 months. Right. And you listen to him and you're like, dude, you've been in the business for like 20 years, right? Right. And the reason why is because he practices all day. Right. If you go into his office, he's got all the scripts around the room. He is structured like way more than the average real estate agent. Right.
And I hear people saying, you know, no, and he just doesn't hear it. He doesn't hear no. he'll say, so you don't want to find out what the most you can get for your home is? Really? I mean, he just pushes back like you can't believe. And 9 times out of 10, he gets the appointment. It's crazy.
Sometimes when I'm doing recruiting and somebody says, I'm not interested, I say, oh, I haven't even told you what I'm offering yet. What are you not interested in? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess I haven't heard what you want. Right. And it's just like an automatic no. You go into the shop and you're looking around at shirts or whatever, and the clerk comes over and says, hey, you need some help? And you're like, no, Of course you need help. You're there. No one wants to waste time. Just show me what I should buy. Right? It's just an automatic response. They don't actually mean it. Right? That's probably the wrong question. Do you want help? The answer is yes or no. That's not open-ended, right? You might say, if I was a dress shirt salesman, I'd be like, hey, you here shopping for business or for pleasure? Right? Something like that. But let's get them talking. All right, let's talk about, thank you, Marinelli, for that example. Does that kind of clarify that side?
Yes, thank you.
All right, let me set some kind of foundational themes for negotiation, okay? The first thing is you need to know your negotiation power, okay? So if I'm sitting with somebody now, let's say I'm sitting with a buyer and I'm the buyer's agent, and I have set some expectations with that buyer, helping them understand, hey, the average buyer looks at 6 to 8 homes before they buy a home. How do you feel about that? Hey, I want to let you know that in your price range in the area that you're looking in, 74% of homes are selling at or above list price. How do you feel about that? If we were to find the perfect property for you and your family, right? The one that has the open floor plan and the backyard that you've described and the double offices upstairs for you and your wife to work from home, whatever, right? You're regurgitating some of the things they've already said are important to them, which is proving you're listening, right? Half the time we're just not even listening, right? And you say, hey, if we were to find this perfect property for you, would you be willing to pay list price or pay over list price? By the way, I'm not suggesting that you buy a home for more than it's worth. Of course, we will write a contract that protects you. And of course, all of our moves are going to be statistically based, right? And market researched and all that. But I'm just curious, how would you feel if you had to pay over list price to get this property? And they say, I'm not paying list price for this thing. I want to pay 85% of list price. That's probably not a very good prospect. Right. But if they say, oh yeah, I know how it is. I expect to do that. Say, oh, great. Now when you go into the negotiation, you've got an educated buyer. And when they come back and say, hey, we want no this, no that, and zero that, it doesn't come off as so surprising to them. Okay. So if you're a buyer in today's market, you basically have no negotiation power. Okay. Everything that like if you want to pay, marginal amount of earnest money, or you want to ask for a bunch of closing costs, or you want a home warranty, or you want like a little longer due diligence period and financing contingency and appraisal contingency and all these things that we could have gotten easily 4 or 5 years ago, most of that stuff's going to get cut down if it's even going to exist in the contract. So you should not go into a working with a buyer right now and make them feel like they're going to get anything they want. Okay. And a win, in my opinion, is getting the home. You got to get the home first. Okay. And when you're competing with 30 or 40 or 50 other offers, we can't be talking about home warranties. We need to talk about how our offer is going to stand out from the rest of these people. Right. Now, if I'm a seller, you want to help them understand, hey, if we price it here, we'll likely get multiple offers, and then we can, these are the strategy points and these are the contractual points that I think that we should really push hard on to our buyers. I think we should make a list of the things that are most important to us that we can share ultimately with the buyer side, so we can get offers that are closely resemble what we're looking for, right? You have a lot of power. Back when I was getting started and building the business, there were literally communities where, like, let's say a townhome community, there were like 15 townhomes for sale in the same community, and they were all the same, basically. Maybe different colored granite countertops or something, but they're all the same floor plan. So if they threw a low ball offer at house number 1 and they said no, they just go to house number 2 or house number 17. So the sellers were basically bending over backward to try to figure out how to get this buyer. Now it's completely the opposite. So when you enter into a negotiation, first of all, you need to know where you are from a positional standpoint. Can I be kind of firm and am I in control here, or am I not in control? Does that make sense? Okay. And the way you're going to figure that out is to know, hey, am I working with, if the guy has, no money and needs, closing cost, and he's got an FHA loan or something like that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with FHA loans. I'm saying that they're not generally as desirable from a seller standpoint as a conventional loan or a cash buyer, right? So if your buyer does not have that much to give, so to speak, then they should be willing to give in other things like temporary occupancy, or who the closing attorney is going to be, or how many days of financing contingency, these kind of things. Okay, so first of all, you got to know what's most important. Okay, you also need to know from your perspective, your client, what's most important for them, right? So the seller might say, most important is the net number of dollars I get. Second most important is that I close on this day, right? Sometimes the exact day that they close is super important, or when they move, or whether they get to keep the furniture, or any of that kind of stuff, right? Whatever is most important to you, let's get clarity on that. Same thing on the buyer side. Most important thing is I get the house. The second most important thing is that they include all the flat screens. Okay, so if I could get you the house, but they don't include the flat screens, would you feel good about this? Yes. Okay, I'm going. Okay. Now, another thing that you need to be keeping in mind is that you are basically negotiating from the very, very beginning. The first time you call, let's say, Michael, I'm the buyer's agent, I'm calling you on your listing. Okay. If I call and say, hey, Michael, congratulations on your listing. Oh my gosh, it's a great backyard. Congratulations on that listing. Hey, I got a buyer that would like to come and see that property. At 2 o'clock on Thursday. Anything I should know about the transaction now? Do you have any offers, or anything in particular that's important to your client? And you're like, yeah, they just need 475, and if you can give me 475, we got a deal. I'm like, but it's listed for 500, right? There's a lot of agents that will tell you things you should not know, or let me rephrase that, that you're fully entitled to know if you ask the right question, yet they should not be talking about it. Make sense? So I'm asking very open-ended questions. Hey, what's most important to your seller client about the sale of this property? I say, hey, we really want to close with this particular attorney. It's like the closing, it's like the buyer's sister or something. Okay. Anything else? No, that's it. Okay, so I'm going to put down the buyer's closing attorney, or the seller's closing attorney, because that's super important to them. It doesn't make a difference to me as long as their fees are reasonable, which I'm sure they are. I'll double check it, but I'm pretty sure they probably are. Right. So you got to figure out what is most important to each of your clients, so you know what to lead with, right? Because a negotiation, just the fact that there's a negotiation generally implies there's going to be some things you get and some things you do not get, right? It's supposed to be a win-win. Both people are supposed to leave the table saying, hey, I got what I wanted. I didn't get 100% of what I wanted, but that's not the type of market we're in, so it's all good. Make sense? Thoughts so far?
Makes sense. How do you know when not to push the envelope too far in negotiations? Like when you're representing the seller and the buyer's agent is asking for things after, during due diligence. How do you figure out how not to keep them?
I'll give you an example. Like, I'm on the seller side. We negotiated, we had 50 offers, and this particular buyer is the best offer, in our opinion, which is really what matters. Our meaning me and the client. And then the seller or the buyer comes back and says, hey, we need the back door needs to be reattached, and we need a couple of breakers changed out or something like that, right? It's something relatively inexpensive. And let's say it's $600, and you're like, you think this guy is going to leave over $600 when he knows he had to fight out 50 other offers to get here? Right? I will admit that's a very challenging conversation to have with the seller, because in one scenario you say these buyers are not going to leave over $600, but at the other side of the argument, They might say, well, what if they do? And we got to start all over again. We might not get another offer that's this good, and we're going to let it go over $600. So it's a very challenging situation to be in. The good news is this is going to sound a little strange. The good news is it ain't your choice. Your job is to gather the information for the client, and their job is to make the choice. So let's review your options, Donna. You can agree to exactly what the buyer has asked for. And we know pretty much for a fact they'll move forward. You could say no, and that gives them an opportunity to leave the contract if they find that that's what they want to do, right? Knowing the terms in which they're selling the home and the now revealed issue that is important to the buyer. If you say no, they have the freedom to leave the deal without penalty. That could happen. Or we could say, hey, we'll pay the plumber's job, but we're not paying the roofer's job, or something like that. Like there could be something in between, right? Ultimately, the seller doesn't have a due diligence period, right? The seller has the ability to answer the request of the buyer, and the buyer has the choice whether they want to stick around or not. So basically, here's another theme, and I'm going to come back around and tie up what I was just saying. You're as good of a negotiator as your next best choice. Okay. Back in that scenario a few minutes ago, if I go to townhome number 1 in a row of 20 townhomes that are available, if I don't get what I want from number 1, I'll just go get it from number 2. There's plenty of next options, right? Now, in the course of your dialogues with the buyer and the buyer's agent, you're probably getting a feeling for how excited they are about the process, which is generally not going to get killed by a $600 electrician bill. And so you can kind of usually get a feeling for, is this, did the buyer's agent call and say, yeah, we a couple little things, no big deal though. Okay, thank you very much. Now we will be saying no, right? Or when you ask the buyer's agent how the inspection went, and they say, oh my gosh, they were in tears for 4 hours because the electrical outlet was backward, and like, gosh, if you don't fix this, then they're probably going to leave. I'm pretty certain they're going to leave. Maybe that's a lie, I don't know, but I would probably be more likely, if I heard that, to tell the seller to just pay the bill. You see what I'm saying? So if you ask the other party how they're feeling, they'll generally reveal to you what you need to know. Okay. And by the way, if your seller ultimately, like Donna, we dealt with this almost exact situation a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, where with my townhome was built in 2019, and the buyers wanted a home buyer warranty. They wanted my seller to pay $500 for a warranty.
Yeah, so generally on that type of stuff, I would probably stand firm, and I'd wait for them to call my bluff, honestly, especially if I'm on the seller side.
And I wonder if there were any warranties left over from the builder, like a 210 warranty.
That's also probably true.
There actually is, and it's transferable. So they have that information.
But generally they don't have the systems warranty after the second year, sometimes after the first year.
Right. And that's, there was just one little thing wrong with the house. There was a problem with the truss up in the attic. So he used that kind of as an example. Well, just because it's only, a year or two old, you already had a problem with the truss. So who's to say something else isn't going to break down in the next year?
Yeah, just as a sidebar, guys, just because the home is new doesn't mean it's perfect. Okay, if anything, it might be the opposite. I knew Candace was going to chime in. Candace, you go first.
I was going to say that I've sold a lot of new homes, and I've been on site with a lot of new homes, and the inspection items are unbelievable. I mean, it's a man-made product made with man-made materials, so there's no such thing as perfection. And a lot of people, when they start to build a new home, they think it's going to be perfect, but I always have that conversation with them, and I would always encourage them to have an inspection.
And don't you do 2 inspections, or try to do 2 inspections when it's new construction?
Yeah, generally you would have what's called a pre-drywall inspection.
Mhm.
So then they're going to inspect all like the air conditioning systems and the electrical systems and the plumbing systems and that kind of stuff before they put the sheetrock up. And then you generally have a final inspection where you're walking around saying, hey, fix that scratch, or hey, repaint that room or whatever.
And often with new home construction, I would have a re-inspection to make sure that the things were done correctly. And I would also do a framing walkthrough, especially if it's a custom home. I would do a framing walkthrough because we've discovered things like, oh man, if you open this door, you can't get in the kitchen. And because of the way it was configured, so things that they can change and framing that they can't change after drywall.
Can
All
I
right,
ask a
cool.
quick question?
Yeah, Lorinda.
Hey, when you're working with new home builders, how likely are you, do you have to negotiate an outside inspector to come in and inspect those, like you just said, the drywall framing, the pre-drywall inspections? I know that the builders have their own people to do that for them, but are you allowed to bring in somebody else to be like your representative?
Yes, and,
Okay.
and builders often, there are county inspectors. That's what builders have. They have county inspectors
Okay.
that pass them on to the next phase of building. But I would always have an outside inspector, and I would have the same inspector that I use for regular residential.
Yep.
The inspector that you like, that is thorough and good and doesn't, isn't an alarmist.
So is that something you negotiate when your client contracts on the house, that you're going to use an outside inspector? Are you able to bring that person on anytime during the process?
So I always communicate. So I would always communicate with the on-site agent or the builder, the contractor that's managing the project. I can't think of what they call them right now, but the building manager. I would communicate with them that my clients are going to have a pre-drywall inspection and also a final inspection. Can you coordinate with us what dates that those need to be, because we have to know when we can go in, and they'll be like,
Perfect.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing I would say on negotiations is I'm towing the line here. I understand this, but it also has a lot to do with price range, right? Like a backward electrical outlet for $150,000 buyer is a big deal. A backward electrical outlet for $600,000 buyer, they don't care about. They'll pay for it their own. It doesn't make a difference generally, right? So you gotta know your audience. Does that make sense? Okay, so we also, part of negotiation is when you have a kind of that list from the buyer or from the seller on what's most important to them, right? Negotiation is a little bit of give and take. So if you say, well, these are the three most important things, and if we can get the deal with these three things, then everyone's happy. But these three things I don't really care about. Like, I'm not saying don't care about this. I'm just saying it is likely less important. Who the closing attorney is, whether it's 10 days or 7 days of due diligence, or whether the closing's on a Monday or a Thursday, like that stuff is less important generally, right? So you might give on the things that you don't care so much about so that you can take on the things that are critical to you, right? And when this goes back to some of the ideas with pricing, but I always like to put the person in the other person's shoes, right? So for example, if I'm working with a buyer and it's multiple offers, and the listing agent has already told me that if I want a chance, I'm gonna have to be over list price. And I communicate that to my buyer, and the buyer says, well, let's say the home's listed for 400. And the buyer says, well, I want to buy it for 380 and I need 10 grand in closing cost, and I want a home warranty, and I want to put out $500 worth of earnest money. Right. Say, let me ask you a quick question before we make this official, okay? What we know is that there are multiple buyers that want to buy this property right now. Don't tell them that's a crappy idea. Explain it to them and let them realize it themselves. So let me put you in the mind of in the position of a seller. I put my home on the market. I immediately get clobbered with showings. And then we get a bunch of offers. And these 18 offers are above list price. So theoretically, I've proven that the market is willing to pay more than list price for this property. Then I get this other offer and it's $20,000 below list price. Then they want me to concede 10 grand on the closing costs, and they want to dictate all these other terms. If you were the seller, what would you do? Don't say they're never going to take that offer. Say, hey, if you were the seller and you had this stuff in front of you, what would you do? And they're like, oh, I guess that makes sense. Okay, so is there any, so there's, if you put out this offer, there's a pretty good likelihood you're not going to win. How are you going to feel about that? Well, I'm going to feel crappy because I really want this home. Okay, so now is our time to do what's called our highest and best. Okay, the way I always used to explain highest and best to my clients was, let's say, Michael, I'm going to pick on you for a second. So home's listed for 400. We've done our research. You want to buy the home. Okay, and we could go to 405 in value, but our lender caps us out at 410, let's say. So I'd say, okay, Michael, what's your highest and best? And you say, well, I think it's 405. I don't think I want to pay any more than 405. I'd say, okay, so let me ask you a question. If you put 405 out there and the seller says no, and they ultimately sell it to somebody different, and then when you go back into the tax records next month and see that the winner paid 406, how are you going to feel? I didn't say that their highest number was good or bad, because truthfully, I don't even know. I'm just asking them how it's going to make them feel. And if Michael would say, man, I can't believe anyone would pay 406. What a sucker. Then that's your highest and best. Okay. But if you're like, oh gosh, for 406, I could have had the house, right? Okay. Then 405 is not your highest and best. Okay. And eventually, one of two things is going to happen as you keep creeping up in price. One is you don't have justification for the price anymore, right? There's never been a sale for, 425. All the data is at 400, and you don't want to be that person. It's okay. You shouldn't pay 425. But if you're going to get pissed that somebody else bought it for 425, then you should probably pay 425. Right? So either you're not going to be able to prove that the value is as high as you're being asked to pay, or you're going to run out of money. Right? In our example, we said 400. I'm only qualified to 410. Generally, by the way, that when they're telling you that, that's the loan amount that they'll loan you. But if you can go get 10 grand from your parents, then now you could potentially go to 420. See what I'm saying? Any questions so far?
So what do you say to that buyer that continuously wants to put in those lower offers, knowing that they're not competitive? I've had that happen. No matter what you explain to them.
It's generally a sign of they have not completely heard how to be successful in the real estate space right now from you.
But
you
they
might have said it, but they didn't hear it.
But they're thinking they might get lucky on one of these offers, so I don't know.
At some point, well, let's go to the first solution first, which is, hey, this is the third one we've lost out on. I think it's time for us to sit back down again and talk some strategy on how to be successful next time. And I'd pretend like you're starting completely over and say, hey, we've seen that homes are selling. They're just not selling to you. So what do you think is the reason for that? Don't tell them, hey, the reason is you keep lowballing these people. Ask them, hey, why do you think you're not winning? Right? How do you feel about that? So let them tell you their experience, right? And then if they're just so hard-headed, they're like, well, I'm going to submit an offer for 400 properties and maybe I'll get lucky with one of them. I'm not interested in that. That's not an opportunity for me. I'm working with serious people. That's not respectful of my time. Quite frankly, it's not even respectful of their time. Right. And the more leads you have, and the more opportunities you have, the more, what's the word I want to use? Selective you might be on who gets the opportunity to spend time with you. Right. Like I made a promise to myself and my family many years ago, said, I think I've reached a stage where I no longer have to work with jerks. And the first time that you identify yourself as jerk, we're done. And I don't really care because I got 50 other people that want to hang out with me and you're driving me crazy. Right. So if you want that ability, and I'm not saying they don't deserve to have a great realtor or any of that kind of thing. I'm just saying I have standards for what it takes to get me out of my house. Okay, because I got 2 little kids and a wife at home and I like hanging out with them. So if you don't adhere to the standards of how to get me to be your agent, that's okay. You can go work with somebody else. Right. And my standards keep getting higher and higher as I have more success. Right. At the very beginning, I would have driven to Decula to sell a home. Now, not a chance. You see what I'm saying? Okay. What have you guys heard today? What's the main takeaway? Oh, and Donna, I forgot to ask you, this probably would have been more appropriate 20 minutes ago, but what was your biggest takeaway from the profit share session yesterday?
Well, just, I think, really for me, what resonated with me was the co-op agents that we co-op with, like kind of just not forgetting about them, that they may not know what Keller Williams has to offer, and finding a way to share that with them. Someone had mentioned calling and saying, hey, you know, we had such a great experience working with you, and my broker wants to thank you. So my broker's going to reach out. Please take that call. So I was wondering if something like that would work with our office. What are your thoughts?
Of course. Of course. There's scripts for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So I've worked with a lot of Keller Williams agents, but I've also worked with agents from other brokerages. So I'm thinking I'm gonna maybe use that.
I think you should. And I also think that you should not limit yourself to the handful of non-Keller Williams agents that you happen to do a transaction with.
Yeah, I liked what you said yesterday too about kind of reaching out to agents around brokerages where Bold is being held around the country. I thought that was an interesting strategy too.
Yeah, I mean, literally you could say, hey, I think I'd like to have some business interests in Honolulu, right? Anyone that wouldn't like to have some business interest in Honolulu, right? Call the team leader in Honolulu and say, hey, I want to be a recruiter for you. So what I'd love for you to do, if you're open, is send me the training calendar every month and let me know every big event that you have in your area. And I'm going to call the competition and invite them to it. Would you be okay with that? And they're going to say, yeah, I'd definitely be okay with that. Say, great. Before you know it, you'll have somebody in your downline in Honolulu.
And then there was someone that mentioned about finding an agent in every state to have as a referral partner. So not just going out and looking for a Keller Williams agent as a referral partner, but finding someone else and bringing them to Keller Williams in that state and making them your referral partner. I thought that was a good idea too.
Absolutely. It just goes back to what we've been talking about forever, which is the more relationships you have, the more opportunities you'll have. Right? Whether it's agents, whether it's buyers, investors, sellers, makes no difference. Right? And also it's other vendors, right? Because oftentimes, you know, the real estate little segment of somebody's entire financial picture is, you know, they need some guidance on that. But oftentimes this is a strange way of saying it, but like buying a house for a first-time home buyer is generally the first adult thing they've done from a financial and protection standpoint, meaning they probably don't have life insurance. They probably don't have disability insurance. They may not have a will, right? They may not have trust set up. They're probably unorganized from a, financial standpoint to some degree, right? So if you can be the messenger of these referrals, hey, I'm not here to sell you life insurance, but I'm just telling you, I think you should have some, right? And if you'd like to speak with somebody, I can be more than happy to connect you. Okay. Because I think every single one of us has heard a story where a spouse passed away and the other spouse had to sell the home because they couldn't afford it. You don't want that to happen to you, do you? See what I'm saying?
And then you also made a comment about, it basically comes down to, do you want to work for someone that shares their profits or someone who doesn't share their profit? That's kind of like the bottom line, and it's kind of a no-brainer.
That's right. But you're not going to be able to, that's a what. You're not going to be able to sell them on profit share is even a what. What I mean is like, they can put it on a spreadsheet and say like, okay, this company does this and this company does that, and this company doesn't do that, and this company doesn't do that. That's a what. It's not emotional, right? People don't make decisions on what's, they make decisions on whys. See what I'm saying? So there's generally something in their world that is not being fulfilled properly, right? They don't have a retirement plan. They don't know how to grow a team. They don't have the confidence they need. They've got old technology. So if you just give them what they need to have, the Keller Williams stuff will come later. I'm not worried about that. I'm in the giving stage right here. Remember, give some more, give some more, give some more. Maybe casually ask for something, right? Give. Right? Half the time they're like, don't talk to me about Keller Williams. Fine. And then 5 minutes into our first meeting, they're like, how much does it cost to be there? Does that make sense?
Then there was actually one other thing too. Like, I think it's Merrill, is that his name?
Yeah.
He's brought like what, 500 people to Keller Williams or more.
Yeah.
And he was saying how I guess he initially came to Keller Williams because of his conversations with someone who he would go on smoke breaks with.
Yeah.
And like that person who brought him to KW has no idea who's actually in his downline, because Merrill has brought, these 500 plus people. And it's like, you never know what, if you bring someone to Keller Williams, you never know what success they're going to have with profit share. And that adds a little interest.
And how diligent it is. I mean, Megan Dwyer, who was the person that attracted me to Keller Williams, I mean, she pretty much makes easily $1,000 a month from me in profit share, right? She didn't know she was going to bring on a future team leader and productivity coach and somebody who was passionate about, growing their downline. But you know what? There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that if I did not do that transaction with Megan, I would not be where I am today. And I am forever grateful for that. And she has earned every nickel she's ever gotten. Right. And I think every time I see her, I thank her. Hey, I was just some little punk that you did a transaction with 12 years ago. And I'm just so grateful you saw something in me where you just decided to bring it up. Thank you. Okay. My kids are in school because of you. I have the house I want because of you. I'm just so grateful.
And so there was one more thing that I just thought of.
Yeah.
Don't count out like your clients. We're thinking of agents, but think about your clients too. And this is actually played out for me on my first listing, where, people are always looking for a career change, something new. And that's what's going on with my seller right now. She's an 8th grade social studies teacher in Cobb County, and she's just looking for a career change. And she mentioned it to me. I didn't think to bring up the subject, but she mentioned it to me, and I've already hooked her up with Robin, and they're meeting on Monday. So don't forget about your clients.
Yeah.
They could be potential recruits.
We just helped a woman sell her house down in south of the city. I have a referral partner out there, and she moved to Virginia. And she was actually, interestingly enough, the buyer of the transaction I did with Megan. Okay, and we've remained friends forever. And she's moving to Virginia now, and she's had a couple of allows before me. She had a couple of really bad experiences with real estate agents. She's in real estate school right now because she knows she can kill it, right? And I'm going to help get her set up with the local leadership up there, and all that. Yeah, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, I've seen this business from just about every angle you could see it from, and this company from every angle you could see it from, and there is no better opportunity than the gift of profit share. Okay, sorry for the sidebar conversation there for a second. Any final thoughts on, thank you for sharing, Donna. Any final thoughts on negotiation? Okay, let's summarize. The first summary point is you got to know whether you got power or not and how much power you have. You also need to understand, is my prospect that I'm negotiating on behalf of, are they fully educated? That's another point. What are the most important things for them? And what are they, therefore, what's important but not so important, right? What's further down on the list? Those are the things that often you could give. Right. And then, of course, remember, you are always communicating. You cannot not communicate. You're communicating with your body language, your words, the speed in which you talk, what you say, of course, right? You're always communicating, and even what you don't say. So it's really important that you don't be so, hey, tell me about your buyers. Oh my gosh, my buyers are super well qualified. They're working with my favorite lender. We shouldn't have any problem at all. What they're really asking is this deal going to close? So that's the question I'm going to answer. I'm not going to say, oh, well, they're this color, or they do this for a living, or, they really need this house because next door is their mother. No, they don't need any of that information. I got super well qualified buyers, known them for a long time. They're working with my favorite lender. We should have no problems here. Candace, did you want to add something?
Yeah, and I just want to say, when you're getting ready to counter a negotiation, I think it's really important to script out what you want to say, strategize it. Don't wait. I've seen agents wing it for negotiation, and boy, it's just obvious. Yeah. So and it's too important a part of the process to just wing it. So practice and script it, and practice till you're confident saying what you need to say.
Yeah. Don't be afraid of silence. Right. And I know most people would probably disagree with me on this, but I also, when I'm in negotiations, I don't like answering my phone that much. I want to hear them say whatever they're going to say, and then I want a couple minutes to think about it. Right? If I answer the phone, I don't have enough time to prep myself, and I don't have enough time to call my client to see how much flexibility they're going to give me. Right? So I'll go to my client sometimes and say, hey, I think I can get them on this. Are you cool with it? Like, how much flexibility can I have with you? As long as we end up here, then you do whatever you think that you can do. And I'll go back and do it, and then come back to my client and say, hey, I just saved you $3,000. Thanks for giving me a little leeway.
And I also think on that, to build on that, not to be reactive. I'm very emotional, and sometimes I'll get a phone call and it'll be something I don't want to hear, and I have to respond to it. And so to take a few minutes back, and I'll do a guided meditation to get myself, straight in my head, so I'm not just reacting emotionally, and then I can lay out my strategy and respond.
Exactly. Exactly. Because if sometimes some of us are very good thinking on our feet, but most of us aren't. So take a couple extra minutes. Like, it's okay if you don't answer the phone. Listen to their message, right? Hey, I think if you can just go up another $100, I think we're going to have a deal. Great. Well, if I answered that call, I probably would have cost my client money. You see what I'm saying? You can tell by the voice how fast they're talking, the emotion in their voice, whether they're in a position of power or not, whether they're feeling confident about what they're saying or not. Right? Hey, if we can get to 2,500 in closing costs, I think we got a deal. And you just stop talking and you stay silent and you say silent some more. I don't care if it's 20 minutes. And eventually they'll say, okay, I think you're right. Let me go see what I can do. See what I'm saying? All right. This was fun. Don't forget Candace's event tomorrow. She'll be posting some info about that. There was also an announcement that was made by KWRI yesterday. I might have to move a few things around in our calendar, but they're putting on like an all-day function. I think it's from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock. It's to benefit Keller Williams Cares, KW Cares. And it's like Gary and Mo and a bunch of other top producers. It's going to be a digital event. And I think they're looking for a minimum of a $15 donation. But that would give you access for the whole day and hear all these top performers speaking. So I'll probably put that on the calendar for next Thursday so you guys can carve out that time. And don't forget, it's the last weekend of the month, y'all. Let's hit it hard. Let's make sure we add some people to the database. Let's do some studying. Let's do some practicing. And when you're working in real estate, give it an honest day's work, right? Sit at your workstation, give it an honest day's work. And by doing that, when you get up from your desk and you go be a non-real estate agent, you don't have to think about real estate. Make sense? All right. Have a great day.
Thank you.